Hi, everyone. This is Edwin. I'm a data engineering manager at Grab. Today, I'm just going to do a quick sharing about a problem space that we've been working on related to real-time analytics or real-time metrics in Grab. It's a real-time observability marketplace. So first, I just want to go through some of the points that we'll be talking about today. So I'll start off with a quick introduction about Grab, so that some of you who might not be so familiar with us can get a quick understanding of what type of company you are and what do we do. After that, I'm just going to run through the problem statements that we started off with and why we ended up with this real-time marketplace observability problem space. Then I'm going to talk about the systems involved in our solution, the two systems called MarketWatch and Midas. Then in the last two sections where we talk about a bit more detail about the system architecture and everything else, I'm going to focus more on Midas, which is the metrics platform and the team that I'm actually the engineering manager for. So let's get into it. So first about Grab. So Grab we call ourselves, we believe we are the leading super app in Southeast Asia. We offer a wide range of services. You can think of us as very similar to something like Uber that you might be more familiar with. So we offer services around mobility, which is like transport, like taking people from one place to another. We cover cars and bike rides. We offer deliveries for food delivery, grocery delivery, which is GrabMart, and also express deliveries. And on top of that, we also offer some digital banking and financial services. So we have banks that operate in a couple of countries, and we also offer like loans and other financial services to our customers. So Grab was founded in 2012. We operate in 8 countries in Southeast Asia, namely Malaysia, Philippines, Thailand, Singapore, Vietnam, Indonesia, Myanmar, and Cambodia. And across these 8 countries, we actually have an extensive network of over 300 cities. And we are solely focused on Southeast Asia. So now to jump into the presentation actual, hopefully you have a better idea of what Grab is now. So the main problem statement we wanted to solve for is how do we get real-time metrics and give actionable insights to the teams on the ground that operate the marketplace of these like 300 over cities that we operate in. So, and how do we improve the efficiency of the teams that are running these marketplaces? So the core idea that we thought should help here is by bringing together metrics and insights from all the different disparate sources, all the different systems that are actually involved in the marketplace operations into one single portal. And within that portal, we need to make sure that the metrics are secured, meaning the right people have access to the right metrics. They are easily accessible. The metrics are trustable, they are accurate, and always reliable. And of course, we need to make sure the dashboard's performance is good. The information that's presented in the dashboards are easily understood by the people who are looking at the dashboards. And of course, we want to make sure the availability of a wide variety of metrics and insights for people who are working across all the different operational concerns. So next, I'm going to talk about the two systems, MarketWatch and Midas. So it's an interplay across the two different systems that make this whole thing work. So first about MarketWatch. So MarketWatch you can think of as the portal or the dashboard or the front end. This is where the operation teams access. So on the right here, you can see a screenshot of what, to give you a brief idea of what the MarketWatch portal looks like. So it's a portal that allows people to choose between, like which country you are focused on, which business vertical you are focused on. So here we're looking at transport and what time range you're looking at. And then you will quickly collect the metrics that are important. This is just a small snapshot of the metrics, but there are a lot more metrics, and then present that information to you. So the idea about MarketWatch is to allow people to achieve these 3 key goals that you see on the left here. First, to watch what's happening in the marketplace, to monitor and observe. And then after you've seen what's happening, we also want to help you detect issues. If there's something going on, we don't want you to go figure out on your own. We want to make sure that the system is able to detect those issues, detect anomalies in the marketplace, and let you know. And finally, after issues are detected, we want to help you diagnose what those issues are, what is causing those issues, and potentially give you some quick next steps that you can use to address those issues. So in order to achieve those three goals of watch, detect, and diagnose, the two things we felt are really important. First is to have automation, and secondly, to achieve explainability. So what do we mean by automation? Automation here, the key goals of automation is to reduce the amount of manual intervention, reduce the effort required by the operation teams to think through the problems and figure out what do they need to do next. We want to make sure there are a set of automations that are available that can either be automatically triggered by the system or triggered by the operational folks on the ground, so that they can use those automations to address the problems that are popping up. So, and the automation should be responding quickly to real-time signals and allow it to adapt to the changing conditions of the marketplace, especially when we see cases of like slow degradation. We want the system to relatively automatically suggest changes and actually implement the remediation to the issues that we detect in the marketplace. Then on the other hand, we don't think automation itself is good enough. When things are automated, humans might feel, or the human operators might feel confused, or they might feel they want to know what more is going on. So what we think we need to provide then is explainability. So in order to provide explainability, we are looking at how do we combine the technologies of large language models and together with expert knowledge from the people, our data scientists and our experienced operators together with the signals that we've detected to provide some sort of explanation of what's going on. And when we are providing explainability, we want to explain the actions the system is taking, explain what's going on in the marketplace to the operators so that they can easily understand. Otherwise, people might feel easily overwhelmed by the amount of information that's being presented to them and the rate of change of the information. So explainability is particularly important in a system that we're building. So beneath MarketWatch, which is the front end, which is the tools that are the user interfaces, the places where people are looking at the data, beneath that, the key thing that we've built out is also a metrics platform. So what we want to build out in a metrics platform, if you look at the diagram on the left here, is we want to have a core platform that compiles the definitions of the metrics, that collects the metadata. All of the metrics are inside the platform, and then these metrics are distributed across many different user interfaces. So the user interfaces here could be like MarketWatch, which is mainly for observability, but we want the same metrics to be also used in reporting, your Power BI, your Superset. You want the metrics to be also reused for experiments. When we run experiments on the marketplace, we want to make sure the same metrics that are being used to run experiments are also the same metrics that are being used for observability. And of course, for exploratory analytics for LLMs, these are all the different user interfaces where the metrics platform is serving metrics out to. So the core of the platform consists of our serving APIs and of course our metrics metadata. This is where we capture all the metrics available. And the consumers are meant to primarily consume over all the other data services that are connected on top, they are built on top of the metrics platform. The metrics we have are computed, especially when it comes to real-time metrics. We use Apache Pinot. It's a real-time database. So the goal of the Midas metric platform is for the metric producer to onboard a metric once, and then we can serve the same definitions and the same metric values across to many, many different systems. So just now I mentioned things like experimentation, MarketWatch, which is the main focus today. We want to use the same metrics for forecasting, for charting, and for many, many other use cases. So we want to make sure we can provide a same set of consistent metrics across many, many different use cases in this metrics platform. So jumping in a bit deeper into what consists of the metrics platform. So primarily in today's world, most of the time, especially if you're coming from the analytics space, when you think of, I want to get a metric, it usually starts with, I want to write a SQL query. You write a SQL query so that you can query the underlying data and get out the metrics. But in the Midas platform that we want to provide, we want to make sure that people no longer need to write SQL queries. They can just write a request. So on the right-hand side here is an example of a request you will send to the Midas metrics platform. So here we're asking for 3 different metrics. We want the metrics to be sliced by 1 dimension, and we're filtering by 1 country and 2 cities in that country. And then the platform would generate the SQL query the underlying data, and provide the results. So we believe that by providing this API, we can allow the same API to be used as an integration point for all the different services that I mentioned before, like experimentation, observability, reporting, and all of that. And if there are new use cases, like recently we've started exploring a lot more with LLMs, the same APIs can be used. So instead of people relying on SQL, which can be potentially a source of inconsistency, and there'll be very nuanced and a lot of small potential for mistakes or inconsistencies. We believe that by registering the metadata into Midas, and for us to build a system that generates the SQL and queries the data for you, it doesn't matter who is requesting for, let's say, this transport unique request count metric. Everyone will be getting always the same data values for the same time range and for the same filters if you're applying those things. So this is a very important core consideration for how we've built out the metrics platform. So in terms of real-time metrics, I think what we have is relatively standard. It's not too different from what other companies and what other teams are building. Basically, our backend microservices, whether it's a service that's handling transport, service that's handling payments, or service that's handling deliveries, they will produce data. They will produce some real-time data, which in Grab, all the real-time data is streamed via Kafka. So how we've designed our real-time metrics platform is, instead of what some people will commonly use, is we want the metrics to be computed in the streaming system like Flink. We don't use Flink to compute the final metrics, but rather we're just using Flink to do pre-processing of the data, to do data enrichment, to do data filtering, so that the data can be prepared to become like a table. If you are coming from the data warehousing world, you can think of the Flink as kind of like preparing the fact and dimension data sources, primarily the fact data source, the real-time fact data sources that we are loading into Pinot. So the microservices produce the raw data. Flink jobs are used for pre-processing the data, cleansing the data, enriching the data. And these real-time data tables are then streamed through Pinot, through Kafka into Apache Pinot. So Pinot then becomes the real-time database, and all the metrics are computed on the fly. We generate metric queries on the fly, and then we serve the metric queries to the users. This allows us to serve many, many different types of queries. So imagine the use case where user A wants the metric to be sliced by city and 3 specific cities, but user B wants the metrics to be sliced by area name. If we use pre-aggregated metrics, you might require you to have different pipelines for different types of aggregations. But by building the system in such a way where the tables are stored as fact and dimension tables, we can allow very, very flexible aggregations. This is the key that allows us to support all the different use cases from one platform. From one single metrics platform, we want to distribute the same metrics data, the same signals to many, many different services that are built on top of our platform. So when it comes to serving of real-time metrics, basically we're looking at three main components. As a consumer of the metric, you will call the API to get, like the API example is like this one. So you send this API request to our metric serving API layer, and this serving API layer then calls the metric metadata service to get the SQL queries that are required to generate the metrics that are in as a part of this request. So once you get the metrics, the serving API will send the generated SQL to our real-time database. So here we're using StarTree Pinot. And the queries, the SQL queries sent to the real-time metrics DB returns the SQL query results, and we prepare the results and we return it back to the metric consumers. On the left-hand side here, if you are the owner of the metric, meaning you are the person who is supposed to be defining the definition of a particular metric, like a cancellation rate, fulfillment rate, then what you would do is you would just store your metric definitions in our metadata service. And then this metrics definition can be reused for all the different consumers that are requesting for metrics from our platform. So we've achieved really strong adoption of the real-time metrics. So this is just looking at the past few months. Actually, we've achieved about 90-something%, 100% growth in the last 6 months. But if you look at a larger window, actually, growth has been like 2 to 3 times in the last 1 to 1.5 years. Right now, we have about 350,000 metric requests per day. That translates to about 10 million requests a month. And our query latency, which we are targeting at P95, is about 1 second. So it takes about 1 second to compute and compile. So to go through the entire chain from a metric consumer requesting an API, generate the SQL query, querying the database and returning the results. At P95, we are observing about 1 second latency. So that is just a quick, very, very brief introduction about what we've done so far, what is the platform that we've built. A key important thing here is we built the platform to solve for marketplace observability, but we build it in 2 parts. One is the actual marketplace observability service, the MarketWatch dashboards, the automations, the alerting systems, all built into the MarketWatch system. But underlying it, there is a metrics platform that is providing reusable metrics for many, many, many different use cases in Grab. So looking forward, of course, this is still a journey. Although we've been working on this for a couple of years now, there's still a lot more to do, especially in this rapidly changing problem space. So a few of the new features that we have been looking at right now is how can we pull the metrics forecasting and root cause analysis APIs that today are more built into a system, the observability system like MarketWatch, into the Midas platform, so that forecasting and root cause analysis can also be used by the other system. So it's not just something that is available as part of the observability stack, but it can be something that can be reused by other systems that are integrating with the Midas portal. So one other problem that we're looking at, like observability, the query patterns are usually small queries, lots of very small queries that keep getting sent to us because people want to look at what happened in the last 5 minutes, what happened in the last hour, what happened in the last 3 hours, 4 hours. But there are use cases that we've seen where users actually want metrics I want to get the metrics values for the last 6 months so I can do ML training. And we want to make sure that when people need to get training data, metrics for ML training, they can get these metrics from Midas also. So what the solution there we feel is to build like APIs that are better at serving batch requests. So that's something we're working on. Of course, with the proliferation of large language models, a lot of people want to have like chat-based interfaces to get metrics, to have a conversation with the large language model to understand the system. We want to figure out how we can better integrate LLMs, and MCP servers is something we're looking at. And on the other side, continuous improvements. I said today we're looking at 1 second latency at P95. That's something we're continuing observing and making sure we can maintain that performance and in fact make improvements to it. Real-time metrics. So why are we talking about extending real-time retention of real-time metrics is because even though real-time metrics are most valuable in real time, like the last 5 minutes of data is probably more valuable than data from 2 days ago. But we do think there's value in extending the retention so that, for example, use cases like ML training, they can also use the same data that we have in the real-time metrics for training. So that's something we are looking at. Coverage of metrics. So through the journey of building out this metrics platform, we realized metrics actually can get quite complex. We don't support all types of metrics yet. That's something we keep looking. We are continuously exploring to figure out how can we extend to cover more metrics, more complex metrics. The more people use it, the more creative use cases people come up with, the more complex use cases people are coming up with. So that's something we are continuously improving on and thinking about how we can figure out to improve the coverage of metrics so we can actually have all of the metrics in Grab, all of the different metric types can be covered, and everyone can just use the metrics platform, the Midas metrics platform, to retrieve metrics rather than having to sometimes still resort to like manual SQL query writing. Yeah, so that is the end of my presentation today. So hopefully if you have any questions, feel free to ask, and thank you very much.